Hello everyone, my name is Adam and I'd like to welcome you to the very first episode in our series on programming with Java. In this series we'll be covering the basics of Java all the way through more advanced concepts, going over a similar scope to a first semester college class. If you have no experience with coding at all, this tutorial series is designed for you. And if you have some experience with coding already, feel free to skip around the series a little. Now before we can get started with programming in Java, there's a few things we have to download and install first. While your computer can easily run Java programs, in order to create Java programs, we're going to need this thing called a JDK, or a Java Development Kit. The JDK is widely available across the internet on multiple sites. I'll put a link down in the description to this JDK I have right here called the Adopt Open JDK, which is one of the more widely used ones. Now, for the purposes of this series, it doesn't actually matter which version of the JDK you download, as long as it's at least version 8. Because of Java's backwards compatibility, all programs written in Java 8 will work in future releases. Likewise, anything written in version 14 will work in any future release, even the ones that haven't come out yet. Due to its wide use, this tutorial series will be using version 8, but feel free to download any more recent version. Everything covered here should still work. Now, we also have an option to choose a JVM. In this case, it doesn't really matter which one we choose, so we'll just go with the first one, Hotspot, and you can go ahead and download and install that. Now, after installing the JDK, the next thing we have to install is something to write our code in. This nifty little piece of software is called an IDE, or an Integrated Development Environment. Before the world of IDEs, people used to write their code in something like Notepad and then manually compile it using the command line, but now we have tools that help us write code. My favorite IDE is Eclipse, and this is the one we'll be using in the tutorial series. But of course, you don't have to use Eclipse. You can also use some other ones which I recommend, like IntelliJ or Visual Studio Code. And more recently, there have been some fully browser-based IDEs that have come out, such as Replit, which, while not as powerful, they provide a quick and easy way to get started with programming. So links to all of these will be down in the description. Once you get your IDE installed and opened up, if you're using Eclipse like I am, you'll see a screen like this right here. So this is the home screen on Eclipse. In order to get started, we're just going to go to the upper right-hand corner and we're going to click Workbench. Here we'll be greeted by a bunch of blank panes, and this is where we're actually going to write our code. On the left side right here, we have a Package Explorer, which is sort of our file system. It gives us all the files that we're working with right now. Down at the bottom, we have our console right here, which will output anything from our program. And in the center right here, we have where we'll actually write our code. Right now it's currently blank because we don't have a file open, but once we open up a file, we start typing code, it'll appear here. And this green button right here, you can see there's a whole set of green buttons. These are your run buttons. The one we're going to be using most in this series is the first run button right here. So in order to get started, we're going to go to this Package Explorer pane right here. We're going to right click New Java Project. Our Java project contains all of our files for our project, like the name suggests, and we're going to just call this project something generic, like my first project or something like that, right? And we're going to go ahead and ignore all the other settings and finish. If we go ahead and open up this Java project by clicking the little down arrow right here, we'll see that there's the Jre System Library, which contains all the pre-built functions of Java, and a source folder labeled src. This is where all our code's going to go. So we're going to right click on here, New, and Class. Now, Java class is something that's gets very complicated, but for now, all you have to understand is that it's a document that holds all of your Java code. Right, so it contains a bunch of Java code, and eventually we'll get more to depth of what classes are and their different uses. But in this case, we're just going to create one Java class, and we're going to call it Hello World. And you'll see why we're naming that in a second. Generally, you want to name your Java classes. You want to have them be descriptive of what they're actually going to do, and you'll see why we're naming it Hello World when we start coding. Now, the important thing to note right here is that under which method stubs would you like to create, you want to check the first one, public static void main string args, and we'll go into what that means in just a few seconds. Go ahead and click Finish, and chapow, we have some code here in the center right here where we're going to actually be typing our code. Now, what you might notice is that you see the word Hello World right here. This is our class name, and you know it's a class name preceded by the word class, right? So the class is Hello World. And we see that there is a curly brace right here, and when we click on the curly brace, you see this curly brace right here is highlighted. So this signifies to us that these two curly braces are linked together. And what this is telling the computer is that everything between this opening curly brace and this closing curly brace is part of the class hello world. So if we start typing outside of this class, the computer is not going to recognize this as part of hello world. It's going to recognize this as something else. Now, it's a little weird that we have to put these inside the curly braces, even though it's in the same document, but we'll see why in a few episodes later when we start adding more stuff outside the curly braces. But for now, all you have to understand is this is the hello world class right here. The word public, not too important to understand what that means right now. We'll go into that in a future video, probably titled something like public, protected, and private if you're really interested. But we have this class right here. If we look here, we have this little bit of code that we checked earlier. And again, we have all these words in front. These are called keywords, right? Public, static, and void. And it's not really important to understand what those mean at all right now. We also have this thing right here. This is string args, and we're not going to use that in this video, and probably not in the next few videos for a very long time. And so it's not important to know what that means. But all you have to know from this line right here, line number 4, is that it's the main function. As you can see, there are another set of curly braces that come right after it. And this means that everything inside these curly braces right here is part of the main function. So the main function is really important because when we push this green run button, the computer is going to look for the main function. And it's going to find the main function. It's going to say, hey, I need to run the main function. And so it's going to go to the main function. It's going to run everything in between these two curly braces right here. We also have a little bit of code inside the curly braces already. It says to do auto-generated method stuff. This is just what we call a comment. It's the computer telling us, hey, I automatically made this for you, just FYI. And so as you can see, it starts off with these 2 forward slashes. This is how we type comments in Java right here. So forward slashes and whatever you want after that. We're going to go ahead and delete this comment right here, and we're going to write our first little bit of code. Now, what most people do when they start programming is they type some sort of program that outputs hello world. It's the name of our class, so in order to print out to the bottom of the console right here, the words hello world, we're going to start typing system.out.println, and we're going to have an open parentheses, close parentheses, followed by a semicolon. And it looks a little weird for a second, but just think about it as if you were in math class or something, right? And you have a function like f of x right here. So instead of typing f, we're typing system.out.println, right? This is the name of the function right here. So instead of being f, like math class, you can have f and g and h and all that stuff. But unfortunately, single letters aren't enough for us when we program. So we have long convoluted names like system.out.println that describe what's going on. And instead of putting x in between the parentheses, we're going to type what we want to output. Like in this case, hello world. And you'll note that I am putting this in quotation marks because we want the computer to treat this as a phrase, right? A single whole phrase. And when we do this, this is called a string, right? A string is just a list of characters or words in Java. And you may note that at the end of this line, we add a semicolon, and that just tells the computer that, hey, what we're doing right here, this print function, it's over, and you can move on to the next thing. So when we push run right here, it's going to print out hello world to the bottom here. And we don't have to print out hello world. We can print whatever. We can say hello Josh or something, right? And wow, we print hello Josh. This print function is actually quite useful. We don't have to just print strings. We can also print numbers too. So we can print number 8 if we wanted. If we push run, and we see that there's number 8 down here, right? And it works. And we can do more stuff with this too. We don't just have to print a single number. We can do some nice math with it too. We can do 8 plus 7 or something. And as expected, we would get 15. Now, I want to leave you guys with something before we go to end the episode, which is if we surround the 7 with quotation marks right here, creating a what is technically a string, we push run, and we don't see 15, we see 87. And so in the next episode, we're going to cover why that happens. But if you think you know why it happens or you had guessed, go ahead and leave a comment down below, and you can see if your guess is right the next episode. But until then, take care. I'll see you later.